The annals of human history, there are moments that mark the end of one era and the birth of another. The fall of Baghdad in 1258 was not just the collapse of a city, it was the shattering of a civilization's heart. Once known as the City of Peace, Baghdad stood as the jewel of the Islamic Golden Age, a center of knowledge, culture, and innovation. Yet, in a few short weeks, the Mongol armies turned its brilliance into ashes. From that destruction, however, emerged a new power that reshaped the world, the Mongol Empire. Long before the thunder of Mongol hooves echoed across its walls, Baghdad stood as a shining symbol of human brilliance and civilization. Founded in the 8th century by Caliph al-Mansur, the city was not merely a political capital, it was the very heart of the Islamic Golden Age, known as Madinat al-Salam. The City of Peace, Baghdad represented an age when knowledge was the true measure of power and learning was the path to greatness. The city's circular design, crowned by magnificent gates and surrounded by strong walls, mirrored the harmony that existed within its borders. From its bustling markets to its grand libraries, Baghdad was a magnet for dreamers, thinkers, and explorers. The scent of ink and parchment filled the air as scholars from Persia, India, China, Greece, and Egypt gathered under the same sky, speaking the universal language of wisdom. In its legendary Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, mathematicians refined algebra, physicians advanced medicine, and astronomers charted the stars with precision unmatched in the world. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad was not only the political center of Islam, but also the intellectual capital of the world. The caliphs, patrons of science and philosophy, opened their doors to knowledge from every culture. Greek philosophy was translated into Arabic, Indian numerals found their way into the global system, and scholars debated not about conquest, but about truth, existence, and the cosmos. The city streets were filled with poets reciting verses, traders carrying silks and spices, and artists crafting works that blended beauty with meaning. But beneath this golden surface, the cracks of decline had begun to spread. The Abbasid Caliphate, once united under strong leadership, had grown weak and divided. Corruption crept into the court, loyalty faded among the provinces, and the once vibrant system of governance became burdened by pride and luxury. The caliphs, sheltered in their palaces, believed that the world's grandeur revolved around Baghdad, that no enemy could ever breach its walls. While Baghdad celebrated its past glory, a new force was rising far beyond its borders, a force that knew nothing of poetry or philosophy but understood the language of conquest and discipline. The Mongols, united under an iron will, began sweeping across Asia like a living tempest. Yet in Baghdad, few took notice. The scholars were still writing, the market still thriving, the caliph still convinced that faith alone would protect the city. This false sense of security proved fatal. The people had forgotten that greatness, once achieved, must be guarded by strength and unity. The libraries that held the knowledge of the ancients could not defend against arrows. The poets who sang of wisdom could not silence the drums of war. The City of Peace, once the center of the world, had unknowingly built its glory on fragile foundations, and so, as the sun set on Baghdad's golden era, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, clouds that carried the storm of the Mongol Empire, ready to turn the City of Peace into the City of Ashes. Far to the east of Baghdad, across the sweeping plains and frozen steppes of Central Asia, a new power was awakening, one that would soon alter the course of human history. The Mongols, once a collection of scattered nomadic tribes, lived harsh lives in an unforgiving land. They were horsemen born of the wind and sky, their world defined by endurance, discipline, and survival. Among them rose a man who would transform their destiny forever, a visionary leader who turned wandering clans into an empire that the world would come to fear. The man history remembers as Genghis Khan. Under his command, chaos became unity. The Mongols, who once fought each other for grazing lands, were bound together under a single banner of strength and loyalty. His leadership inspired unmatched devotion. Every soldier knew that his life had purpose, and every conquest had meaning. What began as small victories on the steppe evolved into a storm that would sweep across continents. The Mongol army was unlike any in existence. It was not vast in numbers, but in speed, discipline, and intelligence. Every warrior was both soldier and strategist, capable of surviving with minimal supplies and navigating across thousands of miles of terrain. Their horses were swift and tireless, their bows deadly and precise. Communication was their greatest weapon. They could coordinate attacks across immense distances with an efficiency that baffled their enemies. To the Mongols, war was an art form, and every campaign a demonstration of their tactical genius. But the Mongol rise was not merely military. It was also political and psychological. They mastered the use of fear as a weapon more powerful than any sword. Entire cities surrendered at the whisper of their approach. To those who resisted, annihilation was total. To those who submitted, peace and prosperity often followed. This balance of terror and tolerance allowed the Mongols to expand rapidly, building an empire that stretched from the shores of the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Eastern Europe. By the time Genghis Khan's descendants took power, the Mongol Empire had become the largest contiguous empire in world history. It was an empire that transcended borders, religions, and languages. Roads, trade routes, and diplomatic missions connected lands that had once been isolated. Goods, ideas, and inventions flowed across their vast territories under the protection of what came to be known as the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. Yet behind this global order was still the same unyielding spirit of conquest. Each new Khan sought to expand the legacy of his ancestors. Among them was Hulagu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, whose ambition reached beyond mountains and deserts to the heart of the Islamic world itself. His target was the mighty city of Baghdad, the seat of the Abbasid Caliphate. The Mongols had risen from the humblest of origins to stand as rulers of the world, but their hunger for expansion knew no limits. What had begun on the cold steppes of Mongolia was now set to collide with the richest civilization of its age. The rising empire of the Mongols was about to meet the city of peace, and the meeting would forever change the course of history. In the winter of 1258, the destiny of Baghdad met the wrath of the Mongol Empire. The city that had stood for over 5 centuries as a beacon of knowledge and faith was about to face its darkest hour. Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, had been sent west by his brother, the great Kanmurk, to bring the Muslim world under Mongol control. One after another, cities had fallen before his unstoppable army. The last and greatest target remained, the fabled city of peace, Baghdad, the beating heart of the Abbasid Caliphate. When Hulagu's forces reached the outskirts of the city, they sent a message to the Caliph al-Mustasim: surrender and be spared. The Mongols had a reputation for keeping their word. Those who submitted were often treated with mercy, while those who resisted faced utter ruin. Yet arrogance clouded the judgment of the Abbasid court. The Caliph, surrounded by flatterers and blinded by centuries of unchecked power, believed Baghdad's walls were invincible and that faith alone would protect them. He dismissed the threat with contempt, sending back words that would seal the fate of his city. Hulagu responded with the silence of preparation. Tens of thousands of warriors encircled Baghdad, building siege engines and cutting off every route of escape. The Tigris River, once a symbol of life, became a trap. By late January, the Mongols unleashed their assault. Massive catapults hurled stones that thundered against the walls. Fire arrows turned night into blazing day. Within days, Baghdad's defenses began to crumble. The people, once proud and prosperous, now cowered in fear as death approached from every direction. When the outer defenses fell, chaos erupted inside the city, streets filled with smoke, cries, and confusion. The Mongols entered with terrifying precision, no mercy, no hesitation. Palaces were looted, mosques burned, and entire neighborhoods erased. For 7 days, Baghdad drowned in blood and flame. The House of Wisdom, the grand repository of centuries of knowledge, was reduced to ash. Scholars who had preserved the wisdom of the ancients perished beside their books. Legends say that the waters of the Tigris ran black with the ink of destroyed manuscripts and red with the blood of their keepers. The Caliph, once the most powerful man in the Islamic world, was captured and brought before Hulagu Khan. There would be no negotiation, no ransom. The great ruler who had refused to bow now stood humiliated before the conqueror. His end came swiftly, a symbolic execution that marked the fall of an empire. With his death, the Abbasid Caliphate, the unifying power of the Muslim world, was extinguished. When the fires finally dimmed, Baghdad was unrecognizable. What had once been the jewel of civilization had become a graveyard of dreams. Thousands lay dead, and the libraries that had lit the world were gone forever. The Mongols had not just conquered a city, they had ended an era. The fall of Baghdad in 1258 was more than a military defeat. It was the collapse of an age of enlightenment. The world watched in silence as the city of peace turned into the city of ashes, and a new, harsher dawn rose under the shadow of the Mongol Empire. When the smoke of Baghdad's destruction finally cleared, the world stood stunned. The once golden capital of the Abbasid Caliphate lay in ruins, its towers broken, its libraries burned, and its people scattered. The fall of Baghdad in 1258 was not merely the conquest of a city, it was the symbolic end of the Islamic Golden Age. For centuries, Baghdad had been the center of learning, poetry, and philosophy. Now, silence filled its streets where once scholars had debated the mysteries of the universe. Yet from this devastation, something remarkable began to emerge, a transformation that would redefine the Mongol Empire and reshape the world itself. The Mongols, though born in war, were not destroyers by nature. Their genius lay in adaptation. After the conquest, Hulagu Khan established control over the lands of Persia and Mesopotamia, founding what would become the Ilkhanate, one of the four great divisions of the Mongol Empire. Though his invasion had left Baghdad in ashes, Hulagu recognized the value of the lands he now ruled. The Mongols began to rebuild, learning from the very civilizations they had conquered. Administrators, scholars, and engineers were brought in from across Asia. The conquerors who had razed cities now began constructing new ones, laying roads, fortresses, and trade routes that connected distant corners of the empire. Under Mongol rule, the Silk Road entered a new era of prosperity. Trade flourished from China to the Mediterranean. Merchants carried silk, spices, gold, and manuscripts across the continent under the protection of the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. The caravans that once feared bandits now traveled safely across thousands of miles, guarded by the very warriors who had once brought terror. This vast network of commerce and cultural exchange became the lifeline of a new global order, spreading inventions, ideas, and beliefs between East and West. Even within the ashes of Baghdad, seeds of renewal began to grow. The Mongols, once seen only as conquerors, evolved into patrons of culture and science. Many of their rulers embraced the religions and philosophies of the regions they governed. Over time, Islam itself found followers among the Mongol elite. Hulagu's descendants such as Ghazan Khan would later convert to Islam and sponsor the rebuilding of mosques, schools, and observatories. The empire that had destroyed the House of Wisdom would one day rebuild centers of learning in its place. This transformation marked one of history's greatest ironies. The Mongols, who had been the instruments of devastation, became the carriers of civilization. They united lands that had been divided for centuries, facilitating a cross-cultural exchange unprecedented in scope. Through their empire, paper, gunpowder, and printing moved westward, while astronomy, medicine, and philosophy traveled east. The Mongols connected humanity in ways the world had never seen before. Thus, the aftermath of Baghdad's fall was not the end of history, but its redirection. The world's greatest city had been lost, but its spirit, its love of knowledge and culture, found new life within the very empire that destroyed it. From the ruins of Baghdad rose a new order, one that carried both the memory of its tragedy and the promise of transformation. In the hands of the Mongols, destruction became rebirth, and conquest became connection. The fall of Baghdad and the rise of the Mongol Empire stand as one of history's most haunting and illuminating chapters, a story written in both blood and wisdom. From the ashes of a shattered city, humanity learned lessons that echo through the ages. Civilizations rise, flourish, and fall not by fate, but by the choices of those who lead them. And though empires crumble, the human spirit endures, carrying forward the eternal flame of renewal. The first and most painful lesson is that greatness once achieved is never permanent. The Abbasid Caliphate for centuries had been the light of the world, a civilization built on intellect, art, and faith, but power had bred arrogance, and arrogance invited ruin. The caliphs believed that the glory of their ancestors would protect them, that their libraries and mosques were shields against the realities of war. They forgot that knowledge without vigilance is vulnerability. When internal divisions fester and leaders grow blind to the needs of their people, even the mightiest walls cannot hold. Baghdad's fall was not caused solely by the Mongols. It was the result of decades of complacency and pride. The second lesson lies in the paradox of the conqueror. The Mongols, born from the wilderness, rose not because of wealth or numbers, but because of unity, discipline, and adaptability. Their strength came from simplicity and purpose, a reminder that resilience often grows from hardship. Yet what makes their story profound is not just their conquests, but their transformation. After the fires of Baghdad, the Mongols evolved from destroyers into builders, from invaders into rulers who valued trade, culture, and learning. Their empire, once feared for its cruelty, became a conduit for global exchange. The same hands that wielded the sword would later hold the pen. The third lesson is the enduring power of knowledge. The Mongols could burn books and topple libraries, but they could not destroy the idea of learning itself. Human curiosity, like the phoenix, rises from its own ashes. The spirit of Baghdad, the pursuit of truth, the love of wisdom, did not die in 1258. It spread. It lived on in Damascus, Cairo, Samarkand, and beyond. The manuscripts saved by fleeing scholars became the seeds of a new intellectual era. Even in ruin, knowledge found a way to survive. The fourth lesson teaches that history is never one-sided. The Mongol conquest was a tragedy for millions, but it also connected worlds that had long been isolated. Ideas that once traveled slowly across kingdoms now flowed through the arteries of a vast empire. This exchange of culture, technology, and belief reshaped the course of civilization. From tragedy emerged transformation, and from fear arose understanding. And finally, the last lesson. Every fall contains the possibility of rebirth. The story of Baghdad reminds us that no civilization, however great, is immune to collapse. But neither is any empire incapable of change. The Mongols prove that even from the ruins of destruction, humanity can build bridges that span continents. The past may burn, but its light guides those who dare to learn from it. The fall of Baghdad was the end of one world and the beginning of another. Its story is a warning and a hope, a reminder that history does not destroy. It transforms, and those who listen to its echoes can still find wisdom in the ashes of the past.